My rude boyfriend kept hitting me in front of my parents because he thought they were too scared to stop him. But he never knew who my dad was, and his latest attack ended with him humiliated. My parents are quiet people. They speak softly. They avoid conflict. They never raise their voices. And they have lived in the same narrow blue house on Alder Street for 26 years without one complaint from a neighbor. My mother, Lorna, apologizes to furniture when she bumps into it. My father, Ray, is 58, repairs commercial refrigeration units for a living, and can spend an entire Sunday fixing a drawer slide without saying more than 11 words about it. Growing up, I thought that was just their personality. I thought I came from mild people, the kind the world moves around. Trevor decided the same thing about them inside of one dinner, and he read it completely wrong, and it took 17 months for him to find out how wrong. I met Trevor Blaine at the front counter of a tire shop on a Tuesday in February. My car had a slow leak, and he was the assistant manager, and he had that specific kind of confidence that makes a room feel smaller so he can be the biggest thing in it. He knocked $40 off my bill and wrote his number on the receipt before he handed it over. For about 5 months, he was good to me. He remembered things. He noticed when I was tired before I said I was tired. He drove out to my apartment at 11 at night once because I mentioned on the phone that I had a headache, and he brought soup and the exact brand of ginger ale I like, the one nobody carries. I told my mother he was thoughtful. She said that was nice, and then she looked at me for about a half second longer than she needed to, and I did not think about that look again until much later. The first crack was small enough that I filed it under bad day. We were at a diner off the highway, and the server brought his burger with onions after he had said no onions, and he did not yell. That is the part people get wrong about men like Trevor. He never yells. He got very calm and very quiet, and he asked her to repeat back to him what he had ordered, and then he asked her to say it again, and he kept that girl standing at our table for 2 solid minutes, making her recite it until her hands were shaking, and she was apologizing to the tabletop instead of to him. He tipped 4% and said she needed to learn. In the car, he asked me if I thought he had been too hard on her, and when I said maybe a little, he said nothing at all for the rest of the drive, and I spent that entire silence working out how to take it back. That was the first time I bought the peace back with an apology I did not owe anybody. We moved in together in September, into his place, because his lease was cheaper, and he said mine was a waste of money. My name came off one lease and never went on to another one. He handled the bills after that. I handed him my check every 2 weeks, and he handed me back what he called my share, and my share got smaller every single month, and by the time I actually did the math, I had $411 to my name and no apartment of my own to go back to. That is not an accident. I understand that now. It is a system, and he ran it very well. My parents kept doing Sunday dinners the way they always had. Nothing fancy, the chicken and rice thing my mother has made my whole life, the same white bowl with the chip on the rim, the same 4 chairs. I brought Trevor because I wanted him there, and I remember being nervous in a way I could not put a name to. Halfway through the meal, he was talking about his district manager, and I said something light. I said maybe it would be easier if he stopped arguing with the man who signs his checks. That was all of it. 11 words. He set his fork down, reached across my mother's table, and hit me across the face. Not a shove, not a grab, a flat, open hand across my cheek, hard enough to turn my head. The sound of it in that small dining room was enormous. I remember my own fork ringing off the plate, and the little noise my mother made in the back of her throat, and then nothing at all. My mother froze with her hand halfway to her water glass. My father looked down at his plate and did not say a word. That silence went on for maybe 9 seconds, and it changed the entire shape of the next year of my life. Trevor watched them. I need you to understand that part, because it is the whole thing. He was not embarrassed. He was not sorry. He did not panic and start apologizing the way a man does when he has done something he cannot believe he did. He looked at my mother, and then he looked at my father, and he waited to see what a 58-year-old man does when a stranger hits his daughter at his own table, and what my father did was cut another piece of chicken and eat it. Trevor's shoulders came down about an inch. Then he picked his fork back up and asked my mom to pass the rice, and he told her it was really good, and she passed it to him. I sat there with my face going hot, and I made myself smile, because I could not think of one other thing to do with my mouth. In the car, he told me I had embarrassed him in front of my own family. He said that if I had not said what I said, he would not have had to correct me, and that I made him look weak in front of people. By the time we got home, I had apologized twice. After that, it was regular, and it never went back. It stopped being an event and became weather. He grabbed my arm too hard at his cousin's wedding in November because I laughed at something a groomsman said, and he held it through 2 songs and told me afterward that he was just keeping me close. He started flicking the back of my head when I said something he thought was stupid, and calling it a joke, and asking why I could not take a joke, and asking my mother at dinner whether I had always been this sensitive. He shoved me into the counter by their sink hard enough that I had a bruise on my hip shaped like the drawer pull for 9 days. And 4 separate times he hit me across the face, and twice of those were right there in my parents' house. Once at the table and once in their living room with the television still going. Every single time the same 2 things happened. My mother looked away, my father went quiet, and every single time, Trevor got a little bigger. He started talking directly to them about it, which is something I still cannot fully explain to people. He wanted them to hear him say it. "You two are something else," he said one night, grinning, 3 seconds after he had shoved me into that counter. "Most dads would say something. Not you. Smart man. You stay out of it." My father kept eating. Trevor leaned back in his chair until the front legs came off the floor. "What are you gonna do anyway, old man? Cry at me?" My mother asked him very softly, the way she asks for anything, if he would please not talk that way in her house. He laughed at her. He actually laughed out loud. Or what? "This whole family is a bunch of mice. It's honestly kind of cute." Then he reached over and patted my father twice on the shoulder and called him chief. My father let him do it. I said we should go, and he closed his hand around my wrist and told me to sit down. We were not done. And my father watched him do that from 4 feet away and did not say one word. It got worse every visit because nothing ever cost him anything. He stopped even performing politeness. He put his boots up on my mother's coffee table on top of her magazines. He told my father to get him a drink, not asked, told, and my father got up and got it. He started calling my dad by his first name in a mocking little sing-song, "Ray, lighten up, Ray," and he made a whole bit out of it for weeks. One night in March, he announced to the entire table, "You know the best part about dating her? Her family knows their place." I say jump. Everybody in this room asks how high. Even Papa over here. And my father, for the first time in months, put down his fork and looked up and looked directly at him. He did not say anything. He just looked. It lasted about 4 seconds. Trevor smirked and looked away first, and then talked louder for the next 10 minutes, and I do not think he ever understood what had just happened in that room. My best friend Corinne saw the marks on my arm in the parking lot at work in April and asked me straight out, and I told her I caught it on a car door, and she said okay, in a way that meant she knew I was lying and would not fight me about it that day. 2 weeks later, she texted me and the message did not go through because he had gone through my phone and blocked her, along with 3 other people, and when I found out, he said he was protecting me from women who wanted my life to be as miserable as theirs. By May, the only people I saw outside of him were my parents, and he came to every single one of those dinners. That was the whole world, him, and 2 people who would not stop him. I tried to leave one time before I knew any of it, that 2nd February, and it lasted about 4 hours. I put 2 bags in my car while he was at work, and I got as far as the end of my parents' street before I pulled over, because I was doing math on a steering wheel. $400, no lease anywhere with my name on it, a car registered to him because he had the better credit, a job that paid every 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks was 11 days out. And underneath all of that, the thing I could not say out loud even inside my own car, which was that if I went into my parents' house, he would simply come to my parents' house. And I had already watched exactly what happened in that house when he decided to put his hands on me. So I drove back and I unpacked both bags before he got home, and I never told anybody I had done it. He found the receipt for the storage unit 3 weeks later and made me sit at the table while he read it out loud twice, slowly. Then he asked if I was ever going to do that again. I said no. That was a true answer when I gave it. In June, I went out to my parents' garage looking for the space heater, and I moved a stack of paint cans and found a cardboard box with my father's handwriting on the side. One word, old. I opened it because I thought it was photographs. It was 14 medals on ribbons, a curled photograph of a young man I had to look at twice to recognize as my father, 26 years old in a white GI with his arm around another competitor, 3 tournament brackets folded into quarters, and underneath all of it, a manila envelope with a case number written across the front. I was still sitting on the garage floor with that envelope in my hands when my mother came out to see what was taking me so long. She sat down on the step. She did not tell me to put it back. She said it was time I knew all of it, and not just the part I had been told when I was a child. My father competed in jiu-jitsu for 15 years. He was very good at it, good enough that the medals in the bottom of that box are mostly from tournaments people traveled for, and he quit at 31. He quit because a man followed him out of a bar and swung on him in a parking lot, and my father did what 15 years had trained him to do, and he put that man on the ground, and the man's head found the concrete curb on the way down. He died 2 days later in a hospital. My father was charged. He said self-defense, and 4 people said the other man swung first, and the state said a trained man is not the same as an untrained man, and my father served 6 years and came home when I was 7. That is why he missed most of my childhood. That is why the only thing he ever told me about it was that it was the darkest time of his life because he could not see me. And when he came home, my mother said, he made one promise and he has kept it for 22 years without a single exception. Never again. Not in an argument, not in a bar, not for pride, not for insult, not for anything. He does not do sparring. He does not go to gyms. He never displays the medals because he does not want to be the man in that photograph. And there was a second part to it that she made sure I heard clearly, sitting on that step with a cold envelope in my hands. A man with his record does not get the benefit of the doubt. If my father put hands on my boyfriend in an argument, my father would be the one in a cell that night, and Trevor would be a victim with a lawyer, and I would be a girl visiting her dad again. Trevor was counting on nobody moving, and my father knew exactly what moving would cost. And so he sat there and he ate his chicken, and he let a 29-year-old man pat him on the shoulder and call him chief. That was not fear. That was a man doing arithmetic every Sunday. Then she told me the last piece, and it is the piece I did not see coming at all. She went to the county clinic in October, the week after the first slap, and she talked to an advocate there for 90 minutes. And the woman told her the 2 things that actually matter, that I would not leave on a feeling, only on proof, and that proof is dates. So my mother bought a spiral notebook, the kind she uses for groceries, and she started writing it down. Every incident, the date, the time, what he did, what he said, who was in the room. There were 11 entries in it by the time I read it, in her small, careful handwriting, going back 8 months. October the 4th, he struck her at our table. November the 9th, he held her arm at the wedding. She wore long sleeves in a warm room. March the 2nd, he told the table this family knows its place. And clipped inside the back cover were 4 photographs of my arm, taken on their couch while I was asleep after Sunday dinner, with the date written on a slip of paper laid beside my elbow so it would show in the frame. My quiet mother, who apologizes to furniture, had been building a case against him for 8 months while he laughed at her in her own living room. She said my father's exact words, the first night after we drove home. He said, if that man swings in this house again, I will stop it, and then I will accept whatever comes to me after. He just did not want to spend 6 more years away from me for something that would not even keep me safe. What he wanted was for it to be documented and witnessed, and for me to be standing on solid ground when it happened. I did not sleep much that week. I went back out to the garage on the Wednesday, and my father was under the hood of my mother's car with a shop light hooked onto the latch, and I stood there a long time before either of us said anything. He said, your mom told you. It was not a question. I said yes. He wiped his hands on a rag for longer than the job actually needed, and then he told me the only real thing he has ever said to me about any of it. He said that when he came home, he decided the man he was going to be was a man who never had to find out what he could still do. And he said the hardest part of the last 8 months was not being hit at and laughed at and called chief in his own house, because he could take being spoken to that way and it would cost him nothing that mattered. The hardest part was that every Sunday I sat across that table and looked at him and saw a man who would not stand up for me, and he had to let me keep seeing that, because the day he stood up would be the last day I had a father in this house unless it was clean. He said, so it has to be clean, and your mother is making it clean. Then he asked if I wanted to hold the light for him, and I did, and we did not say another word for 40 minutes, and that is the closest thing to a conversation about it the 2 of us have ever had. 2 weeks later, the last night. It was a Sunday, it was the 9th, and it started over a text message. My phone lit up on the table next to my plate, and it was a guy from my shift asking if I could cover Wednesday, and Trevor picked my phone up before I could reach it and read it out loud in a voice, and asked who that was, and I said a coworker, and he said say it again. I said it again. He hit me across the face at my mother's table, harder than any of the other times, hard enough that I tasted blood along the inside of my cheek, and the chair moved under me. My mother stood up, and then Trevor drew his hand back to do it a second time. He never got there. My father came out of that chair faster than I have ever seen a human being move, and I have replayed it maybe 1,000 times and I still cannot see the middle of it. He did not throw a punch. He never made a fist at all. He caught the arm that was already coming back, turned his hip into him, and put him face down on the dining room carpet, and then he was kneeling on him with both hands locked somewhere I could not see, and Trevor was not going anywhere. The whole thing took about 3 seconds. There was a plate on the floor and a chair on its side, and my boyfriend was screaming into my mother's carpet, and my father was kneeling over him breathing completely normally, and his voice when it came out was the same soft voice he uses to ask if you want more rice. Call the police, he said to my mother. Tell them a man is being held for hitting my daughter. My mother was already walking to the phone. Trevor lost his entire mind on that floor. floor. Get off me. This is assault. You're the one going to jail, old man. Do you know who I am? Let me go. I'll end you. I'll end all of you. He said it over and over, thrashing, trying to get a knee under himself, and my father did not answer him one time and did not adjust his grip more than twice. And after about 90 seconds, Trevor stopped being able to yell because he had used up all his air. My mother did not sound soft on that call. She gave the address. She said her daughter had been struck in the face at her table by her boyfriend. She said it was not the first time. She said there was a written record with dates. And she said her husband was restraining him until officers arrived, and that nobody was injured otherwise. 9 months of my life summarized in about 40 seconds by a woman I had spent that entire year thinking was too scared to speak. 2 units came. The moment Trevor was upright and cuffed, he started performing, and he was good at it, because he had been good at it his whole life. A crazy old man attacked him at a family dinner. He was eating. He never touched anybody. This family is unstable. He wanted his own report filed. He asked twice whether the officers knew my father had a record, and he said it like a card he was proud of holding. And then my mother handed the officer a grocery notebook. She talked him through it. 11 dated entries in 9 months, times, quotes, the names of everyone in the room, and 4 photographs of my arm with the dates in frame, and my face right there in front of him, still red, already swelling along the cheekbone. 2 witnesses who were not me, in their own home, describing the same event the same way. There was nothing for him to argue with. It was not my word against his. It had never been my word against his, because my mother had made sure of that starting the week it began. He was arrested that night. He was charged, and he took a plea in the fall, rather than let my mother read that notebook out loud in a courtroom. And there is an order now that keeps him away from me, and away from Alder Street for 3 years. My father was not charged with anything. The officer wrote that he acted to stop an assault in progress on his own daughter in his own home, and both witnesses said the same, and that was the end of it. Although my father sat at that table for 2 hours afterward with his hands flat on the wood and did not eat, because a part of him had been waiting 22 years to find out if the promise he made would still hold up if it ever got tested. Trevor tells people my father jumped him. He tells them he was ambushed at a family dinner by a violent old man with a history, and that he is the real victim here. And I know for a fact that a handful of people believe him, because 2 of them unfollowed me, and one of them left a comment on a photo of me and my dad at Christmas. It used to make me want to explain myself to strangers. It does not anymore. The notebook is still in the drawer under the phone, in the same place it lived for 9 months while he sat 10 feet away from it with his boots up on my mother's magazines. She never hid it. That is the part that stays with me. It was in an unlocked drawer in an open room the entire time, under a stack of coupons. And he never once thought to wonder what the quiet people in that house might be doing while he talked. I moved into my parents' back bedroom in July, the one that was mine until I was 19, and my mother talks louder now, in general, about everything, like something got unstuck in her. My father still goes quiet when he is angry, and I have learned to read that silence completely differently than I did a year ago. The box in the garage never came inside. I asked him once if he wanted to hang the medals somewhere, and he said no, and that was the entire conversation. The trophies are still in a box in the garage. But last Tuesday at 2:14 in the morning, my phone lit up. Can you give me one more chance?